All right, welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving into a truly spectacular explainer. We are going to completely deconstruct this monumental undertaking by the renowned team at the Shelter Institute. We're looking at a sprawling, totally custom timber frame project that was recently built from the ground up right out on the beautiful, rugged coast of Maine. If you've ever been fascinated by the sheer scale, the precision, and the pure craftsmanship of timber framing, well, you are in the exact right place today. We're going to trace this massive build from the raw timbers all the way to the finished structure, uncovering exactly how traditional techniques meet modern engineering to create a building that's literally designed to last for centuries. So, what makes this barn so incredibly special? Well, the clients brought a super bespoke vision to the table. We're talking incredibly specific elements here. A sweeping, massive glulam staircase, an actual fully working haymow, inverted braces, and these just breathtaking king post trusses. These definitely aren't your standard off-the-shelf requests. Every single one of these custom features introduces some pretty complex engineering hurdles and demands meticulous craftsmanship. So we're going to unpack exactly how the Shelter Institute team brought each of these challenging elements to life.
All right, Section 1, Cutting and Raising Bents.
Now, before we watch this massive structure go vertical, let's talk about the foundational unit, which is called a bent. Basically, a bent is a structural framework of timbers. Think of it almost like a cross-sectional slice of the building itself. You see, timber framing is essentially a giant, life-size 3D puzzle, right? And the whole process begins way before anything is raised into the air. Every single joint, mortise, and tenon is precisely measured and cut right there on the ground. By assembling these heavy vertical posts and horizontal beams completely flat, the crew actually leverages gravity to ensure absolute precision. Because think about it, if one single cut is off by even a fraction of an inch, the entire multi-ton puzzle just won't fit together when they stand the whole wall up.
Okay, let's track the timeline of day one on the site. Once those bents are all assembled flat on the ground, the actual raising happens with this incredibly energetic, almost musical rhythm. First, you start by raising the first two bents, and that immediately establishes your structural footprint. Then, using cranes and some serious heavy rigging, the crew seamlessly moves right to the third bent, then the fourth, and finally, the last bent. Guiding these multi-ton units into perfect alignment is just a highly satisfying sequential process to watch. Literally, within a single day, we get to witness a flat foundation completely transform as the imposing skeleton of the barn suddenly rises up against that main sky.
So, let's look at our first major custom feature, the inverted brace. Usually, traditional timber frames have braces that angle upwards, from a post to support a beam, right? But here, the client actually requested diagonal supports angled downwards, literally completely reversing the traditional orientation. And this specific structural design choice isn't just for looks. It fundamentally changes the tension and compression dynamics of the whole frame. The team had to really carefully integrate and secure these downward angle braces into the overall skeleton before they could even think about fully squaring up the timber frame for the next steps. Honestly, it's a brilliant twist on historic building norms.
Moving on to Section 2, Engineering King Post Trusses.
Okay, so with the primary bends standing tall and the lower skeleton completely squared up, the team had to tackle the incredibly intricate engineering required for the barn's massive roof structure. To span spaces this wide, they utilized a true historic architectural powerhouse, the king post truss. Just notice how that single vertical post right dead in the center connects the apex of the roof straight down to a really substantial horizontal tie beam. This specific design creates a rigid, incredibly strong triangle that's capable of spanning super wide, open areas without needing this whole maze of supporting columns underneath it. It's exactly what provides that majestic, vaulted, wide open space that makes traditional barns feel almost like cathedrals.
And let me tell you, hoisting these things is no small feat. The crew followed a really specific, careful procedure here. Step 1, raising the first truss with absolute precision, literally battling wind and gravity to land it exactly on its marks. Step 2, implementing the specific design detail right at the peak, making sure the joinery locks the entire span together safely. And then Step 3, obviously, is just duplicating that effort to finish out the overall truss installation. Pulling off the sequence safely really capped off a remarkable first day of heavy lifting, leaving this awe-inspiring timber canopy standing tall on the coast.
All right, Section 3, enclosing with SIP panels.
So, now that the beautiful wooden bones of the barn are fully assembled, how do we leave those gorgeous timbers exposed on the inside while completely protecting them from that harsh Maine coastal weather? Well, that requires a highly specific modern solution, and that solution comes in the form of SIPs. SIP stands for Structural Insulated Panel. These are essentially high-performance building panels made of an incredibly thick insulating foam core that is tightly sandwiched between two structural facings, usually oriented strand board. Think of it kind of like a giant structural ice cream sandwich that acts as your exterior wall, your sheathing, and your insulation all at exactly the same time. The team immediately shifted gears right into the preparation and installation phases of wrapping the entire barn in these thick panels.
Now, you might be wondering, why on earth would a traditional timber framer use modern technology like this? Well, when you compare it to the traditional multi-step framing process, the one that requires completely separate stages for exterior walls, sheathing, vapor barriers, fiberglass insulation, the whole shebang, SIPs just give you this amazing all-in-one modern efficiency. You are literally bolting thick, completely unbroken blankets of structural insulation directly to the outside of the timber frame. Modern timber framers overwhelmingly choose SIPs nowadays because it creates an incredibly tight, energy-efficient building envelope. It keeps the freezing cold out while keeping those beautiful timbers totally visible from the inside.
But since this is such a highly distinct custom build, applying these panels was definitely not your standard day on the job. The crew actually faced some pretty incredible challenges during the detailing phase. Because of those bespoke inverted braces and the really complex roofing elements surrounding those king post trusses we talked about, the large, rigid SIP panels couldn't just be, slapped on. Nope, it required intense precision detailing, super careful measuring, and a ton of custom cutting to fit these thick panels perfectly around every single architectural anomaly. Ensuring the thermal envelope was completely sealed tight was absolutely crucial before they could even think about beginning the SIP moving process.
Which brings us to Section 4, Unique Custom Interior Finishes.
Okay, so with the structure fully enclosed, protected from the elements, and all the robust exterior physics finally wrapped up, the attention turns to the really delicate, appreciative craft of the interior finishes. This brings us to a super satisfying checklist of the final bespoke elements the client asked for. First up is this absolutely massive, expansive glulam staircase installation. Glulam, or glued laminated timber, basically allows for these striking, swooping architectural curves that perfectly complement the straight, rigid lines of the timber frame around it. And second, there's the inclusion of a fully functional, working haymow. Rather than just being some cute aesthetic nod to barn history, the team engineered this space to be perfectly integrated and structurally capable of actually serving its traditional agricultural purpose. It is literally the perfect marriage of form and function.
Honestly, from cutting the bends to raising those massive king post trusses, dealing with those tricky inverted braces, sealing the envelope with SIPs, and then installing all those breathtaking interior features, this entire coastal Maine project by the Shelter Institute is just an absolute masterclass in modern timber framing. And it all stems from a client with a really vivid imagination. Which kind of leaves us with a fascinating thought to ponder as we wrap this explainer up. If you were drawing up the blueprints for your very own dream timber frame build, what unique architectural feature would you prioritize? Would it be arch trusses, maybe a functional haymow of your own, or something completely out of the box? Keep exploring, keep learning, and we will see you in the next explainer.